From the rainy mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters, welcoming you all to tonight's show. Yeah, we're going to have a good one as we spread this right across North America and on TalkStream Live 24/7 and Revolution Radio digitally. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and much more. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio for the show, along with my own personal handle at Dave Scott SOR. Tonight's show is brought to you by, well, Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. In 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, had something really, really strange happen. Yeah, a man-sized bird, big wings, big red eyes. What could it have been? This made national attention, national news, and then it led to something very, very ominous as the legend of Mothman was born. Looking into this phenomena for the last couple of decades is investigator and researcher Bill Kousoulas. And we're going to get into this big time with him tonight. This is one of those stories that just will not go away. As recently, over the last couple of years, there's been sightings in the Illinois through Indiana area of the United States, and we're going to learn all about this tonight. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Bill Kousoulas, first time on the show. We love having you here. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey, I'm fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity. Really been looking forward to this.
Me too, my friend. Me too. This is one of those topics that just will not go away. I mean, we've heard every angle. We've heard every rumor. We've heard every folklore piece of information that could be out there. Yet we always go back. We always want to know more about this topic. What do you think about this topic of Mothman that just, after so many years, keeps yourself and many others intrigued?
You know, it's just a fantastic, fantastic story. And I'll tell you, when you were just giving the introduction here, Dave, the first thing that came to mind to me, for those who have seen the movie, if you're included in that, there is a scene where Alexander Leak, who his last name, Leak, is actually Keel, John Keel's last name, spelled backwards. When Richard Gere is questioning him in the movie about, didn't you need to know what was going on with this whole phenomenon? Leak looks at him and says, we're not allowed to know. And to me, that's the part that's the most fascinating about this. There have been so many sightings. There's been so much said. There have been volumes of books written about the topic, and we still don't know what the heck it is. That's the most fun part of it for me.
The mystery that you were chasing, when did this start for you?
You know, let me back up just a little bit if I could, Dave. My fascination with the paranormal began way back in the 1970s. I guess I'm getting to be an older gentleman, if I could call myself that. But there was a television show on in the late 70s called Project Blue Book. Not the same Project Blue Book that has been aired on the History Channel the last couple of seasons, but it was more of a documentary that spoke to some of the UFO sightings and the different cases, aliens, all this type of stuff and investigations. I was like 9 years old when I started watching this stuff, but I was just riveted to the television when that show first came on. And every Sunday night I had to watch that show. So I guess my walk with the paranormal started about 9 years old. I'll skip a couple of decades. Was sitting around with my first wife. She wanted to watch a movie, and she said, I've got this movie. It's called The Mothman Prophecies. Do you want to watch it? And I said, well, okay, I'll check it out. I was always interested in the paranormal. But this movie, Dave, it just gripped me. And it wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, the best movie I'd ever seen. But the story, the people, the actors, the drama, the suspense, the soundtrack, everything about that movie was just riveting to me. And it kicked off, for me, almost 20 years now, I guess 18 years worth of studying everything I can get my hands on about the phenomenon and the story. And it's the mystery that surrounds it that really attracts me to it.
Over the years that you have been covering this entire field, this entire Mothman prophecy, or whatever you want to call it, why the intrigue? Why the drive to try and figure out when this thing has been turned over more times than a rock on the beach looking for crabs, and yet here you are still going hard at it, along with others?
Yeah. And I would say here recently, there have been more and more folks that are truly interested in the whole phenomenon. I think, for me, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, Dave. I was born in 1967. So looking back at that era is kind of historical for me. It's where I started. It's how I landed, on this planet as a baby. About the same time this stuff was happening. So looking back in that era, I think the historical aspect of it is what gets me, in addition to the paranormal phenomena that took place, during that era, that 13 months, really, that was the big window of the activity that happened there. I'll tell you, my wife and I have been able to visit the Point Pleasant area. We don't live anywhere close to Point Pleasant. We're about a 500-mile one-way drive from there, but I like to tell people that the phenomenon is what brought me to Point Pleasant initially. The people are what brought me back. The people are just down home, kind-hearted, love to have conversations with you, into the folklore. Not everybody believes the legend. Some of them are kind of opposed to it. But what it's done for that community has been just amazing in terms of tourists and you just people that are interested in this phenomenon. They have visitors almost every day of the year from all walks of the earth that show up in Point Pleasant still looking into this.
Outside of Mothman, do you get into the UFOs? Do you get into Bigfoot, Dogman, or anything along those lines?
Just kind of on the periphery, really. It's interesting to me. I enjoy getting information about different things. I've really been a fan of the Small Town Monsters productions, the things that they do, the Bray Road Beast. That's one of their things they've done. They've done an episode on Momo. They do some really neat things. But it's the Mothman that's had the pull on me more than anything else. Now, my wife and I are both kind of into the UFO aspect also. We belong to a MUFON group here in Illinois, but nothing pulls me like Mothman does.
What's the draw to it comparatively to everything else?
I would say, and I let off here with a movie, but I think, I'm sure folks that are listening right now, and probably yourself as well, are aware that the movie is basically it's a Hollywoodized fictional portrayal of what happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And that kind of got me interested in it. What really got me going was the book itself by author and investigator John Keel. And John Keel did most of his work in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and some forward of that also. But he investigated not just the cryptid aspect, the manifestations of the black-winged creature that came into the community, but there were all other types of phenomena that were taking place, both within that community and also within his home state of New York that he investigated that seemed to be very, very related to one another. He received a number of different prophetic telephone calls, people speaking in terms of channeling voices over the telephone. A lady that he knew by the name of J.P. Perro, who was an investigator in Long Island back in the 60s. There was just all kinds of stuff that was going on during that point in time. I would say probably the actual Mothman itself is, I hate to say it, but it's kind of the least interesting aspect of the whole mystery. To me, it's all the other stuff.
The mystery behind it, you have been to Point Pleasant a few times here over the last 4 years. Now that we're going into that half-century mark, or getting close to it from the incident that happened, and we'll get into the history of this, when we get back from the break at the bottom of the hour. What's the attitude around the community about, going through this entire process and living it year after year, but now as a tourism field that brings in probably a couple $1 million annually on this event?
And I would say from the folks that I've talked to, for the most part, they welcome the legend. Not everybody believes in the legend. Of course, it was 50 years ago, so a lot of the folks that actually witnessed what took place, they're not with us anymore. But as you mentioned, it brings in an awful lot of revenue. People are very, very interested. There are community members. One of them, who's a friend of mine, who we actually traded messages on Facebook this evening before the show, and he saw that on my Facebook page I'd posted that we'd be doing this tonight. He's like, "There's nothing to it. That didn't happen." So there are debunkers. There are people that don't believe in it at all, and then you've got your folks that are all about it.
So with the community that is there, I mean, whether or not they believe in it or not, are they behind, supporting an event that, unfortunately claimed the lives of a number of people?
Yeah, there definitely is that aspect of it. Although the actual Mothman wasn't really held responsible for hurting anybody, that Silver Bridge collapse that you're alluding to, where 46 people did lose their lives. It was kind of a culminating event that was really kind of correlated with what happened with the other manifestations of the actual Mothman, the prophecies, even UFOs. There were all kinds of UFOs that were sighted during that time. The community seems to celebrate it now, 50 years later. And like I said, there are people that kind of push back against it a little bit. But for the most part, I think they welcome the festival and the things that it brings to the town, because it's really revitalized Point Pleasant in the community.
It really has. And if more communities would actually jump on board with some of these legends and lore that are around the town, I mean, imagine what that would do for tourism dollars for a lot of these smaller communities that could use it. Like, I know my backwards thinking community that I live in, we had a famous alien abduction back in 1988 here. I would love to be able to, I would love to be able to do with our town that Point Pleasant has done with theirs with the Mothman, and nobody died. Nobody died, man. And yet there were over 40 people killed when the whole collapse of the Silver Bridge, so it just makes it a little bit more interesting, but it also shows too the naivety and the negativity that seems to follow these type of topics when it comes to anything strange and weird being tied to actual community events.
And that's a really good observation. And I can share with you the little town that I live in. Not so little. It's Sycamore, Illinois. We're about a little less than 20,000 people here, and we actually have a festival at Halloween called the Pumpkin Festival. Now, they don't celebrate so much the paranormal there. It's just something that one of the earlier members of the town had put together back decades ago, and had kids decorate pumpkins and put them on the courthouse lawn. It's more of a family type event. But I'm telling you, this little 20,000 person town, or even a little less than that, we pull 100,000 visitors that weekend. It's massive. So yeah, to celebrate something like you're talking about that happened within your town, you'd think there'd be a big audience for that, some type of a big venue for that. Maybe they need to do a movie there first, and then it'll happen, because that's what happened.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Maybe that's what has to happen. Is Hollywood needs to get involved, and you never know. You never know. But it does good. It does good, and it brings much needed tourism revenue dollars into a community that is, that's free money for a community. Free money.
Absolutely.
So I'm surprised more don't jump on that. I really am surprised.
It's a neat thing, Dave. And like I mentioned before when we spoke before the show tonight, I'm kind of laser focused on the Mothman phenomenon. That's kind of my area of interest. So I spend an awful lot of time doing it. It's an up and coming type thing right now. I think it's still growing, but it's nowhere compared to Roswell, and certainly not a lot of the UFO type stories and alien abductions and things. I think that's probably a little bit more mainstream, probably a lot more mainstream than Mothman is right now, but they really caught lightning in a bottle after that movie happened, and they've done a tremendous job of marketing it and putting together a quality product within that community.
I got to ask, Bill, why do we believe that Mothman is real? There's a lot of cryptids out there, okay? There's a lot of of monsters out there that are much more believable. I think of Bigfoot. I think, the reason why I don't go into the ocean is I still think there's megalodon. Never mind the great white sharks, where I'm a meal.
Yeah.
But I think there's megalodon still out there. But, why should we believe that this creature is real?
I think that's a fantastic question. And I think the first thing that I would say in response to that is that there were 100 eyewitnesses of the Mothman phenomenon back in 66 and 67. Point Pleasant itself is only about a 4,000 person town, maybe even a little smaller than that. It's the micropolitan center of the community right there. You've got Yellowpolis, Ohio, right across the street or across the Ohio River, and then the small town of Kanagwa and some other little towns there. But really, the community itself, it's not big. And the percentage of sightings that took place that were corroborated by at least one interviewer, if not two. And I've had several conversations with Jeff Walmsley. Jeff is the curator and the owner of the Mothman Museum, kind of local historian. And he told me, he said, it's been 100 sightings by at least one qualified interviewer, mainly John Keel. But then there were a good 50 that were also qualified by 2 to 3 investigators. So there was an awful lot of what we call data to support that something was going on there. Do we know what it was? We don't know what it was. There's all kinds of different theories that abound as to what it was. But I think, again, going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, it's the mystery. It's the fact that you can't really definitively say what it is. I think that's the big intrigue.
Really?
For me, it is. Yeah, I think for me.
Okay. So let's look into this from a paranormal aspect. Then, what is the community like as paranormally speaking? Because that entire Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio area, there's something really screwed up about that place when it comes to everything strange and weird. And I mean that with all due respect and compliment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a different energy there, and I think that an awful lot of it goes back to the fact that there were significant battles that were fought. In Point Pleasant, it's stated in certain circles that the very first battle of the Revolutionary War took place within that area. Additionally, the fact that Native Americans basically were very concentrated within that area, there's a lot of lore that goes around with that. One of the theories about the Mothman itself is that it could well be a thunderbird or a Garuda, a manifestation of a Native American or even a Buddhist phenomenon that basically is kind of a harbinger, and not necessarily a harbinger of bad things, but just something that foretells significant events that are going to transpire. I think that's part of what the entire mystique is also with the Mothman and the Mothman Prophecies, where the fact that that particular entity was seen as something that foretold possibly the Silver Bridge disaster.
Well, I mean, but that's the big thing. When we get to the reality of this creature and the paranormal side of it, I mean, is it demonic? Is it something that we need to look into, Bill, and just say, there is something supernatural happening? Or is it just a bunch of young people who started a great rumor coming out of a retired nuclear facility and or weapons facility and just grew into whatever it is from there?
And I'd say that to answer your question about the possible demonic origins of the manifestation, I'm not an expert on demonology. I couldn't tell you a lot about that type of thing. There's certainly a sense of foreboding that I think was really well conveyed by a lot of the folks that were interviewed, both for the Mothman Prophecies as well as some of the later date type sightings that have allegedly taken place in the Chicagoland area. So, I think whenever human beings encounter something out of context, something that we're not familiar with, it's outside of our comfort zone, especially at dark, which is when most of these things have taken place, glowing red eyes, I mean, that would freak me out. That would scare me. And the first thing I think I'd want to do is to run for cover. Now, the flip side of that is there's a prolific author by the name of Andy Colvin, who has done an awful lot of research about the Mothman phenomenon also. and he subscribes to the perspective that the Mothman is more in line with the Garuda aspect that I mentioned earlier, that it's a protector deity, that it's there to warn, and even in some cases help us through trials that we go through in our lives. So I think that the perspectives are kind of all across the board. I lean more towards an angelic perspective than a demonic one personally, but I fear the devil and God. You know what I'm saying? Those are powers that are greater than I am. They fascinate me.
Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We have about 2 minutes here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Bill, you talk about this idea that it might be a Thunderbird. For people who do not understand what the Thunderbird is, could you break that down for us?
Sure. A couple different perspectives again as to the Thunderbird. Now, the Thunderbird itself in Native American lore is actually a spiritual being. Takes upon a physical manifestation. It kind of flies with the lightning, so to speak. It rides with the thunder in Native American lore. Similar to that in the Buddhist ideology also, in that it's kind of an interdimensional thing that, again, you need to kind of fear it and respect it, but a lot of those belief systems subscribe to the perspective that this is something that is to be respected, and it may very well be foretelling something coming up that you need to be paying attention to.
So why do you think it's prophetic?
Well, to kind of dovetail that back into what I was saying a moment ago about the Mothman itself, and again, Coleman's perspective that the Mothman, and also John Keel, his perspective that the Mothman may well be a Garuda or a Thunderbird. Keel received all types of different prophecies, as we were talking about a few minutes ago. During that 13-month window in 66 and 67, he received prophecies that Martin Luther King was going to be assassinated. He was given a date. It didn't happen on the exact date that King was assassinated, but it happened 2 months to the day after it happened. Also, in the book Mothman Prophecies, Keel speaks to an alleged attack that was going to take place on the Pope at the time in Turkey. And sure enough, within the window of time or close to it that he was given this prophecy, there was an attempted attack on the Pope. He wasn't killed. I don't believe he was even stabbed, but an individual tried to take his life. Those are just two examples of some of the things that took place that corresponded with the phenomenon of the Mothman back in the 60s.
All right, Bill, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight. He's been researching Mothman for the last 20 years, and we're going to get into the history and go deep into that as we enter the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know little brother is watching.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month, and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. So for more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Need that weekend supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best in paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We're taking Sunday nights out of this world on Spaced Out Radio. This is Michael W. Hall, also known as the Paranormal Lawyer. Together, we're going to go on an exciting journey into the unknown. I'm going to bring you some of the best interviews in the paranormal and supernatural to start your new week off on a freaky note. So tune in to Spaced Out Sundays with me, Michael W. Hall, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate your time. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. We want to remind all of you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, which is updated daily. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter for the show at Spaced Out Radio. For my personal handle at Dave Scott SOR. Check it on out. Tonight we are talking Mothman. 20-year researcher of this phenomena, Bill Kousoulas, is our guest tonight. And Bill, we welcome you back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Not a problem.
We
appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being here. Bill, let's go back in the history. What exactly happened in 1966?
So back in 1966, which is going back just a little bit before I was born, so I'm trusting my sources here, mostly John Keel. Back on November the 12th of 66 in Clendenin, West Virginia, there were 4 grave diggers who were out in a cemetery doing their job. They were digging a grave, and they sighted a flying humanoid, a man with wings who was in the cemetery. And of course, spooked them. It freaked them out. Word began to pass through, the area. Now, Clendenin, West Virginia is not quite right next to Point Pleasant, but it's about 60 to 90 minutes away from Point Pleasant itself. Now, the next day, a gentleman by the name of Merle Partridge, who has been mistakenly called Newell Partridge, with an N, by both author John Keel as well as author Gray Barker, and then that's been passed down through the channels of communication over the decades. His name is actually Merle Partridge. He was sitting at home one evening, the evening after this cemetery event, was watching his television, and his television started kind of winding out, making a really high-pitched noise, and then the picture just snapped. I mean, it just went. There was a disturbance that was happening in the backyard, and he had a German Shepherd dog by the name of Bandit. Bandit ran out of the house. He was in the backyard, and he was running around in circles, which Mr. Partridge said, this is a really smart dog. He didn't do stuff like this. He said that he'd seen, some type of red circles that were kind of going around with Bandit. It appeared he was chasing these red circles that were happening, and then all of a sudden, it was gone. Bandit disappeared as well also, not into thin air, but he just disappeared, took off. They never saw the dog again. So that was the next, manifestation of something weird going on in West Virginia. Within a couple days after that, there was a sighting that took place in the McClintock Wildlife Preserve area. It's also known as TNT area. TNT is in dynamite. That particular area back in World War II was an area where munitions were built for the war effort. Dynamite, TNT, was kept in these igloos that were constructed out of concrete, and then there was like an overlay of forest and grass and such that covered them up. The whole idea was to keep it secret from any flying planes in case enemy aircraft had gotten into the area to see what was actually happening there. But to get back to 1966, the place is largely abandoned now. Not a whole lot going on back there, except kids used to like to use the place as like a lover's lane kind of thing. Hang out to go make out or hang out or drink a few beers or whatever, teenagers and young adults like to do. And these two young married couples, Steve and Mary Millette and Roger and Linda Scarberry, they were in a 57 Chevy of Rogers, just hanging out, and all of a sudden they saw this weird gray entity with bright red eyes, and it scared them half to death. So they got into the car, they jumped onto Route 62, which is how you get to the McClintock Wildlife Area, about 10 miles outside of Point Pleasant, jumped onto 62, stepped on the gas, drove as quick as they could to get back into town, while this being flew right behind their vehicle. Red eyes glowing, scared them half to death. They showed up at the police office, they made a report, and rather than debunk what had happened to these kids, the officer knew them to be upstanding young people in the community. Good kids, weren't going to make something like this up. That's what began the whole thing in the Point Pleasant area.
When these kids came out with this story about what they had seen, I got to ask you, how many people actually believed them? Why was this story believed right off the bat? Because when you hear people talk about things like that, you obviously don't put much truth or faith into a story like that.
I think one of the things that Keel talks about in the Mothman Prophecies is that much as this officer who interviewed them had said, their credibility was not in question. These weren't kids that would make something like this up. These were just good, law-abiding young people. And it was obvious to the officer that these kids, they had seen something. Now, they weren't calling it Mothman yet. They weren't calling it anything other than something that scared these kids. And honestly, in Point Pleasant, the Mothman phenomenon itself was really more referred to as the big bird. They referred to it as the bird. It was the media that got a hold of it, the national media. They named it Mothman basically because Batman was such a popular television show back in the day. So I think the legend itself kind of took on a life of its own. Even back then, they didn't get information as quickly as we do today, where you can fire up an iPad or look at your telephone and get, more information than you'd want to see. Word spread quickly for that time. And coupled with the fact that these kids were credible and the way this legend began to take on national proportions, it kind of took on a life of its own. Now, does that mean everybody believed them or thought that it was something supernatural? I don't think so. Not at all. Not at all. But nonetheless, the legend began to grow from that point forward.
Was there a matter of time where all of a sudden, after this sighting happened, that they started, other people started seeing this creature as well? Or was it more bandwagoning by the community because other people wanted to continue the story along?
The way that the information that I've gotten my hands on depicts what took place, it didn't seem like a bandwagoning. In fact, there were other things that I alluded to in the first segment of the show that began to kind of grow along with the sightings of this alleged creature. Now, there was a lady by the name of Marcella Bennett, and she was visiting her family members in or near the McClintock Wildlife Area. And she was going to play a trick on the folks that were inside the house. Actually, the parents had left the kids there. The kids, I believe they were early teenagers, were in the house and walked up onto the porch. And before they were able to get inside the house, she was holding onto her young daughter. She saw a manifestation of a being who was standing on the ground and kind of shambling towards her, not overly aggressively, but it scared her to the point that she froze in her tracks. Not only froze, but collapsed and fell on top of her daughter. And as Keela writes about, she knew or believed that she was smothering her child, but she was so mortified by this entity that she had just encountered that she literally could not get up. Thankfully, a family member was able to come get her up off of the child, and no harm was done to the little girl. But that was another instance of a very similar manifestation taking place in the community in a very short window of time.
I'm still kind of estranged on the idea about why everybody all of a sudden jumped on the bandwagon, from the police to university professors to everybody trying to figure out what was actually being seen in this community. Can you get into that a little bit?
I think so, because it wasn't just a couple of isolated incidents. There were other things that were taking place in the area that were really odd, too. Now, are you familiar with the Indrid Cold aspect of the story?
Oh, yes. Good old Indrid.
So right around the same timeline, and I'm sure a bunch of the folks that are paying attention to this story right now are already aware of, and maybe some aren't, there was a furniture salesman by the name of Woodrow Derenberger, who was from the Parkersburg area of West Virginia. Parkersburg is about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 north of Point Pleasant. And Mr. Derenberger was returning home from work around the same time in November of '66. And as he's driving down the highway, he feels that he's getting kind of passed somewhat aggressively by a vehicle behind him. He thinks it's just another vehicle that's just going to go around past him. And then he realizes, at least according to legend and according to his story, that this was not a vehicle that was driving. This was some type of craft that was flying. And this craft actually went up and around him and then stopped in front of him and got out. There was a gentleman who got out of the vehicle, came out, a good-looking young man, is the way Derenberger described him, and approached Mr. Derenberger and then communicated with him telepathically and basically told him, we don't mean you any harm. I'm from a country that's much less powerful than yours is. We're only here to search. My job is a searcher for the world that I'm from. So now you're not only having these Mothman-type experiences with kids being scared, with community members being scared, but all of a sudden this other aspect comes in with this alleged space traveler who encounters Woodrow Derenberger. And according to Derenberger, this was not an isolated incident. He actually built a relationship with Indrid Cold and some of his colleagues, and he has books that he's written. His daughter has written a book also about her family's experience with the Indrid Cold phenomenon. So that was just another aspect of the whole Mothman prophecy story that arose during the same time.
And what was the reaction from the educated or the lawful community on this? Did they actually believe that this was something that was happening in their community?
So to kind of expound a little bit upon the Indrid Cold aspect of things and the Woodrow Derenberger end of things, he actually was interviewed by Air Force personnel, was flown down to, I believe it was Florida, to be interviewed, and allegedly it was supposed to be some type of vacation for his family. And they went out and saw the sites of the Space Center and so on and so forth during the day, but at night, man was interrogated completely about what happened. Tell us what happened. Don't talk about this. He was forced to take a lie detector test, pass the lie detector test. I mean, this was just something that was kind of happening at the same time, a contemporary event similar to, or part of the whole Mothman prophecy story. On the other end of the story, which is the Mothman, or the main storyline of things, more and more odd things began to happen in the community. There was a time during '66 and '67 where the military came in and quarantined off the McClintock Wildlife Area, or the quote-unquote original habitat, or at least as legend has it, that's where they said the Mothman was sighted the most frequently. And the public was not allowed to go in there and really question them. They were just basically held at bay. And in addition to that, men in black started showing up in Point Pleasant as well and trying to silence the witnesses to these different phenomena. So, I mean, all kinds of weird stuff was going on during these 13 months. It wasn't just this physical black being with red eyes that scared people. There were all kinds of other aspects too, and it almost looked like, or really, at least as far as I'm concerned, from what I've read and studied and learned from community members, there was a real shutdown, disinformation campaign going on about whatever it was happening around this legend too.
Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, and we are talking Mothman tonight. Bill, you just mentioned the men in black and that they wanted to shut people up. That sounds kind of strange for the Men in Black to all of a sudden show up unless they maybe knew something was actually out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sure does. It sure does. And we haven't even spoken much about the lights in the sky and the UFOs that were sighted in addition to
we'll get into that
and all that. That's another huge part of the story.
So why the Men in Black?
Well, again, I think to silence the folks. We got to know on our very first trip back in 2016 a lady by the name of Carolyn Harris. Now, Carolyn Harris has been in a number of different documentaries about the Mothman over the years. And in 2016, my wife and I decided to take a vacation. Jackie said to me, "Where would you like to go?" Let's go to Point Pleasant. Let's just do it. So we went down to see the Serpent Mound down in southern Ohio, and the next day we drove to Point Pleasant. Now, we arrived at the Mothman Museum after closing hours, but we kind of peeked our nose into a restaurant right around the corner, and Carolyn was the proprietor of that particular restaurant. It was called Heresy Steakhouse, also known as the Mothman Cafe. Now, Carolyn, and we'll talk about her throughout the show at various points, but she spoke to us about direct experience with the Men in Black. Because she was 74 years old when we met her. Unfortunately, she passed away the same year, in 2016. But she talked to us about the Men in Black, and it was cute. The way that she described them was, she said they were government men. We thought they were government men.
Interesting. Now, with these Men in Black that they were seeing, were they the prototypical Men in Black where, the black suits, the black hats, maybe not looking very human?
Yes. But again, the only eyewitness that we spoke to during our visits to Point Pleasant of the Men in Black was Carolyn, who's since passed on. But she, like I said, she thought they were from the government. But I have heard different reports. Jeff Wansley is one of the folks I've gotten to know pretty well in the community, the Mothman Museum proprietor, co-founder of the Mothman Festival. And, he had spoken to, the fact that there's a very good chance that maybe these Men in Black were something else.
Well, that's always the thinking. That's always the thinking. On whether or not Men in Black is there two different types of Men in Black? Are there the governmental ones? Are there the alien ones? We really don't know. That's what makes it so intriguing.
Exactly, and that could be a whole different topic for a whole different night. But the bits and pieces of what I've picked up on from Men in Black and the research that I've done over the years, it leans more towards the otherworldly than it does towards the government.
That's interesting. Now, why do you say that?
Well, and Keel writes an awful lot about the Men in Black, as does Gray Barker. Gray Barker has a book called Men in Black, the Secret Terror Amongst Us. I think that's the name of the book. Fascinating read on Men in Black, and just talks about their really ethereal nature, the fact that they don't seem to really get how to be a human being, if that sounds correct. There was a lot of stuff that was written in the Mothman Prophecies by Keel, where he speaks of different, what he calls impersonators. You could tell they were trying to be human. They were trying to be military officers, Air Force officers and such. One of them in a restaurant who ordered Jell-O, took a look at it and tried to drink it instead of using a spoon. All kinds of just weird stuff like that. Gray Barker talks about one type of Men in Black that he calls the cadavers. He said they look like they're pasty white. They've been dug up from a grave. They just don't look human. They don't sound human. They don't move human. There's nothing human about them.
So because there's a feeling that these Men in Black that are visiting are some sort of alien species, do you think they're tied to Indrid Cold? Or does the people investigating in town believe that?
So the folks I've talked to in town, our conversations haven't really gone the Indrid Cold direction. Jeff Wamsley and I have talked about the Indrid Cold and Woody Derenberger aspect. We've talked about that a little bit. The other people that I've talked to in the community, we've talked more about Mothman. We've talked more about Indian folklore. We've talked about historical aspects of the Point Pleasant community. We haven't really gone a lot into the whole Men in Black area. We just haven't discussed that much.
Oh, well, we're discussing it now, though, my friend.
Well, you and I are talking about it, yeah.
I want
Yeah.
I want that theory, man. What do you think? Think the Men in Black are tied to Indrid Cold?
I would just. So Andy Colvin, who's the guy who compiled all of John Keel's articles into 9 different fantastic books, talks about the Men in Black and goes in depth about them. Some of them being, again, possibly what he calls spooks, secret government type, black ops type people, no real identities, disinformation specialists, et cetera, et cetera. But again, there's the other aspect, this Indrid Cold thing, and Colvin even talks about, he thought that Indrid Cold was actually more on the spook side than he was actually the otherworldly side. So, I mean, the jury's kind of out about that. That's another layer to the mystery of the whole Mothman Prophecies phenomenon, is that we just really don't know.
Oh, man. The mysteries are just so huge with this. Huge.
It really is. It really is.
I gotta say, man, that is one of the most intriguing parts about this, is how it does tie to UFOs and the legendary alien of Indrid Cold, if he really exists, because Indrid Cold also plays a huge role in the series Hellier that Greg and Dana Newkirker have created as well. I mean, they're just everywhere. Yeah,
what
go
a
ahead.
Fun series. You mentioned Hellier, and I'm sitting here with my stack of Keel books, Mothman books, et cetera, et cetera. I've got Secret Cipher of the Ufonauts right in front of me, like T. Alan Greenfield. I saw Alan had actually kind of piggybacked on the thread that you put out earlier tonight. And he talks about Indrid Cold in that, and he gets into the numerology aspect of the names, and what a fascinating read that book is. I mean, just kudos for just a fantastic production. What a fun book that is.
Yeah. Alan's tracks a lot of what we do. Alan Greenfield, that is, author of Secret Cipher of the Ufonauts. And Alan is he's a good cat, man. He really is. He's an interesting guy when you get to talk to him. Have you ever talked to Alan on the phone?
No, I never have spoken to Alan on the phone. I'd love to do that.
Oh, you have to. You have to. It is very, very interesting, very difficult, because if you're not on his level, it's very hard for somebody on my level to make sense of what he is saying. And I absolutely love it. He is so far out there, and I mean that in such a positive and professional way that it's worth the conversation, man, to send him a message and just say, hey, can I ask you about Indrid Cold?
Yeah. That could be a fun conversation. I really appreciate the way that he has put that book together. It's
for sure,
all over the place. It is.
Oh yeah.
But it really ties up a lot of disparate threads, in the thoughts that I have had. And you have a lot of aha moments when you read that. It's a fun read.
Bill, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break at the top of the hour. Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking Mothman. We're going to find out about Indrid Cold, the tie to Mothman. Yeah, let's go down the woo train. We're heading into the tunnel now. Hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio coming up.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together, we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates across the continent. On the digital side, we're on TalkStream Live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, along with Revolution Radio. Don't forget, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Falanuik or Falanuik? I don't know, but the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, along with my personal handle at Dave Scott SOR. Tonight we are talking Mothman. 20-year researcher into this phenomena, Bill Kousoulas, is our guest tonight. And wow, we are going to get into some, well, let's just face it, Bill. We're going to jump aboard the woo train here a little bit, and we're going to go for a ride, aren't we?
Let's do it.
All right. So for those of you who haven't responded to the thought of the Dave today, all right, because the thought of the Dave, I put it right towards Mothman. And that is, what are your thoughts on Mothman from the 60s to the sightings people are allegedly having today? And you wanted to get into Alan Greenfield's response on this.
Yeah, I really would like to do that because I think Alan really sums things up, Dave, in a much better way than I have thus far in the show. And I'd just like to read this if I could. Alan had said, Mothman, or Thunderbirds, have been around as long as people have, possibly longer. They are manifestations related to UFOs and Men in Black, or the constant shifting interactions with other realms currently best explained by theoretical physics, specifically the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Now, I really wanted to read that right there because, as I mentioned, I think Alan sums up really the crux of the way that both Mothman Prophecies author John Keel has theorized that he believes that Mothman really is what, in his word that he liked to use, a transmogrification of energy manifesting to the percipient in the way that the percipient is open to being able to understand that phenomenon. Andy Colvin, who has collected all of Keel's articles into 9 excellently written and compiled volumes, also speaks to a similar a similar train of thought when it comes to what his perception of Mothman is. And with your permission, Dave, I appreciate you letting me kind of kick things off the second hour to sum that up, because I think Alan did such a nice job of wording the same thing that I've thought and have kind of come to understand in the limited bit that I can of what this thing might be, you know?
It always seems to tie with Alan to aliens, ultra-terrestrials, because he doesn't like the word extraterrestrials. And Alan, if you're listening tonight, hi, how are you? Can't wait to get you back on the show. But, I mean, what do you buy with that? Because Alan's a little bit deeper than what we normally get into.
You know, thus far, you know, in the conversation, yes, but ultra-terrestrials is also a word that Keel used to describe the different energies, the different, you know, manifestations of phenomena that he had been involved with investigating, including Mothman. Believed that he didn't buy the whole nuts and bolts UFO type theory, even though he was a ufologist before he investigated Mothman. His whole idea was these are things that have been with us on this earth. It's like a breakaway civilization, a breakaway society that we can't really perceive with our five senses. It's something that can kind of come to us sideways, out of left field, like the Mothman has.
Alan also is very, very involved with Indrid Cold as well, who you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How does it tie in?
Yes. You know, and I am not as familiar with Alan's publications as I am with Keel's or Colvin's, but the little bit that I've read of Alan's work, meaning the complete secret cipher of the Ufonauts, he does speak of Keel. He spoke to, I want to think, and again, I'm not an expert with his stuff, but I want to say that there was an encounter that somebody allegedly had with Indrid Cold. He was living in, I want to say, in southern West Virginia, not quite the Point Pleasant area. I mean, as recently as the 70s or 80s, if that sounds correct. I'm kind of I'm stretching a little bit here to try to recall this specific incident, but yes, he does talk about Indrid Cold, and several times within that book.
Okay, so getting back to Indrid Cold, you know, I mean, we hear this with the Kentucky Goblins. We hear this with a lot of East Coast chatter regarding the strange and weird. Why is he so prominent in everything that seems to happen that's strange in that triangle of West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, Dave. As you mentioned earlier, that whole area just seems to be steeped in all types of odd paranormal occurrences. Yes, Indrid Cold is a certain aspect of that, both, you know, especially with the new popular series, Hellier. He's a piece of that. They speak to him in that series. Obviously, in the Mothman Prophecies, being a contemporary of the Mothman phenomenon and a component of the Mothman Prophecies book, he's there as well, too. The rest of it, though, as far as the East Coast is concerned, Andy Colvin had a really interesting theory that perhaps Indrid Cold wasn't an ultra-terrestrial, wasn't a man in black, wasn't a spaceman, but was actually part of the mafia.
Really?
So that's just another odd aspect, a theory that Mr. Colvin has come up with that it's worth looking at. You know, it's worth considering.
UFOs. You also mentioned right before the break that there were a lot of UFOs hanging out around the area and being seen.
Yes, absolutely. And Carolyn Harris, who we talked about a little bit a few minutes ago before the break, talked to us about the beautiful lights in the sky that they saw back during the Mothman phenomenon. In fact, one of the things about the actual Mothman 13-month window in Point Pleasant in the 60s that isn't mentioned as prominently was there was a ton of ufological activity. There were all types of sightings, different spacecraft. There was actually a Red Cross bloodmobile that a young gentleman was driving along with a companion. I believe she was a nurse, was in the passenger seat. They were kind of driving in the Point Pleasant area, and they noticed out of the corner of their eyes an alleged space ship that kind of swooned in on them, and there were some tentacles kind of coming out of the spaceship itself, it looked like perhaps it was trying to get blood from the vehicle. And that's one of the things Keel talks about in the Mothman Prophecies, is that it seemed to be able to find women during their monthly time. For whatever reason, this energy seemed to seek out women on their cycle, which is another bizarre aspect of blood and what have you. So a lot of ufological activity. There's actually a chapter in the Mothman Prophecies book that's called Purple Lights and April Foolishness. And it just speaks to some of the lights in the sky and the different craft that we're seeing, and just some of the odd telephone calls that were being received by different people, both within Point Pleasant and even more specifically in New York, where Keel was from, at the same time.
So with that, were people having contact with whatever these UFOs were?
I don't believe there was ever any contact in terms of any like alien presence that had come to visit somebody or perhaps attempt to abduct somebody of that nature. I believe there was some missing time that took place. There were people who had lost certain time. In Gray Barker's book about the Mothman phenomenon, which interestingly came out 5 years before the Mothman Prophecies did, and it was kind of more fictionalized. Barker was more seen as somebody who got creative. He used a lot of creative license with his investigations, even did some hoaxing. So his credibility isn't as strong as Keel's is. But there were chapters in his book, The Silver Bridge, where he talks about different manifestations of this Mothman energy being in bedrooms with different people, awakening them, scaring them half to death, then disappearing. That energy was present there. It really was. Never any real attacks. Nothing really spoken to this energy really hurting anybody directly, but a lot of fear involved, a lot of odd occurrences, energy sense, weird telephone calls, things of that nature. A lot of that took place during that same time.
Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking Mothman tonight. So in regards to these UFO sightings, do you think that's what brought the Men in Black to Point Pleasant?
It could very well have been. I mean, there's also the theory, and I'm not so sure that I don't, at least in some ways, subscribe to the possibility of Mothman perhaps being an alien presence that did arrive with some of these spaceships. I mean, those things occurring at the same time, you got to stop and you've got to at least investigate that aspect of things. So to your question, I think that quite possibly that was what drew them, although the legend itself, the UFO aspect, isn't nearly as prominent as the Mothman aspect is.
Interesting. So getting back to the creature, when these strange occurrences started happening, the people who had their sightings of this creature, was there any type of communication, albeit vocally or telepathic, from it?
Not really telepathic, except in terms of one of the recipients that Gray Barker speaks of in the book, The Silver Bridge. There was a woman who he said she had second sight, so she had some psychic perceptive ability. She was able to, pick up vibes and have certain predictions and such, and didn't see it so much as a gift as something to be kind of afraid of. She had sensed that she thought there was a sadness to the Mothman energy, that there was some type of misplaced, I'm in the wrong spot. And in fact, she was a very religious woman, and she'd actually taken time and actually prayed for the Mothman itself. So in terms of actual communication, words, visions, that type of a thing, not so much of that, but this one particular individual did sense that perhaps it was lost, perhaps it was trying to find itself, perhaps it was even scared.
So was anybody physically attacked previous to the collapse of the Silver Bridge?
Nobody was attacked. No, people were chased. There was a shoe store manager by the name of Tom Urey, who in broad daylight was chased by, he called it a big bird. He didn't describe it as a Mothman, but he actually, again, high-speed type chase. This bird just tracked right with him and never harmed him, never caused his physical being any pain or anything like that, but No, to answer the question, there wasn't really any type of physical harm that happened to anybody outside of the, I don't want to use the word coincidence, but the timeliness of the Silver Bridge collapse. That's the only thing that's ever really been hinted to, that there was some type of physical harm that was done to anybody. But, you know, I don't know. My personal thoughts are, I don't believe that this Mothman energy phenomenon, ultra-terrestrial, what have you, I don't believe that it caused the Silver Bridge. That's not what I think.
Well, let's get into the Silver Bridge collapse. December 15th, 1967. What happened?
So what happened was, it was a very cold winter night. People were out December 15th. It's 10 days before Christmas. It's rush hour, not that Point Pleasant, Gallipolis, Ohio are big towns, but you know, any town experiences some extra traffic around that time of day, 4:30, 5 o'clock. People are getting off work. People are out doing Christmas shopping. Silver Bridge itself was built in 1928, and it was built according to 1928 standards. It wasn't built with 18-wheelers in mind. It wasn't built with, several thousand-pound vehicles in mind. It was a 2-lane bridge. It was built by what they call an I-bar construction, so kind of one link into another link and another link that kind of combined the structure of the bridge itself. And the lights on the bridge, ironically, both turned red at the same time. So the folks that were traveling from West Virginia to Ohio, they stopped on the bridge, and vice versa. That traffic was stopped also. Now it should be red-green, so, one side can go, but this wasn't the case. And Keel uses the word recalcitrant in the Mothman Prophecies. The lights they weren't working. And for years prior to December 15th, 1967, people had, this idea that this bridge is kind of rickety, it's kind of old, and one of these days it's just going to fall into the river. And lo and behold, it filled up with all these different vehicles, way too much weight. I-bar number 13 cracked, and the whole bridge went down. And according to residents, locally in the town, Denny Bellamy, who's in a couple of different documentaries, both The Mothman of Point Pleasant as well as Eyes of the Mothman, speaks in both of those about, people were just chit-chatting and visiting, and before you know it, bridge goes down in a few seconds, it's over. They're gone, and it was just a horrible, horrible tragedy. 46 people lost their lives in that Silver Bridge collapse. And to this day, the town, it's still a very prominent memory in the townspeople's lives. Even if they don't believe in the legend of the Mothman, they know what happened here was very real, very traumatic, and they still feel it.
So with that, there's that alleged famous picture of what looks to be the Mothman sitting on the Silver Bridge. Is that just a Photoshop hoax?
I think that's a hoax. I don't see any validity to that whatsoever. There have been folks that have come forward that said they saw a Mothman on the bridge or by the bridge shortly before it went down. What I do find some credibility in, not necessarily is these, the Mothman sightings allegedly that took place right before the bridge went down, but the day before the bridge went down, there were a couple of men dressed really oddly climbing on the bridge. And they weren't like wearing the types of clothes that somebody who's going to be inspecting a bridge should have been wearing. They were wearing like dress shoes and plaid pants. It was just kind of a bizarre out there, kind of almost a Men in Black type of thing that is, to me, is more credible than what you were alluding to with the Mothman picture and the possible Photoshop. I don't think there's anything to that. And I don't think, at least the people I've talked to in Point Pleasant don't believe that. They don't believe the Mothman caused the bridge to go down. Some of them don't even believe in the Mothman, but they don't believe that there's any correlation between the Mothman and the bridge going down for the most part.
So why do they tie the two together?
I think it's the timeliness. I think it's the fact that after the bridge did go down, the whole, in Jeff Wamsley's words, it put a calming effect on the community. And Denny Bellamy speaks to it also. Nobody wanted to talk about the Mothman. This was such a horrible catastrophe. They just shut all that out, and it just stopped. Now, have there been sightings in decades since then? There have been reports. You've heard different things here and there, Ohio, West Virginia, different states. But that 13-month window with 100 sightings, nothing like that has ever taken place in that area again.
Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking Mothman tonight. And, you know, one of the things in regards to this, a lot of people want to blame Mothman for this bridge collapsing. Never mind that the bridge had actually cracked and it was old. It wasn't meant for the technology of the day driving over. And let's face it, vehicles were beasts back then. They were beasts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, they were the size of ferry boats, some of them.
Big vehicles.
Yeah.
Heavy vehicles.
Real American steel.
Yeah, I've not been one that's ever subscribed to the Mothman being there to cause harm. I'm more in the Colvin camp of, you know, to me, it sounds like it's an ultra-terrestrial. It's something that's predicting things. Perhaps it predicted that something catastrophic was going to happen and that was the catastrophe that happened. In fact, Keel had thought that one of the chemical plants was going to explode. He thought some other different type of disaster was going to take place. In fact, he went to great lengths to try to get a hold of his ally, a lady by the name of Mary Heyer, who was a newspaper reporter who was all about this entire phenomenon. And the two of them paired up and they really studied this whole thing. In a lot of his articles that Colvin has compiled over the last few years, speaks to warning Mary, something's going to happen. You know, Mary even had a dream that she saw a presence floating in the river and didn't know what that meant. So there was all kinds of stuff that there was a definite odd, eerie vibe that was taking place that, you know, did the Mothman inspire it? Maybe. Was there something else that kind of did it? And as Keel talks about, this Mothman was just a transmogrification or a physical manifestation in the way these people can perceive it. And that's what this was all about. One of the other things we haven't really gone into yet, Dave, is that, interestingly enough, the Ohio River meets the Kanawha River. They intersect right at Point Pleasant. And actually, George Washington named the town of Point Pleasant. He called it, this is a pleasant point where these two rivers meet, and then they flipped the name around to Point Pleasant. Now, what I'm driving at here is that this is not the first bridge collapse that happened over the Kanawha River. This is the famous one. This is the one we know about that's associated with the Mothman. Interestingly enough, in 1904, on the Elk River, and I want to say it's the intersection of the Elk and the Kanawha, although my geography might be slightly off here, on December 15th, 1904, there was another bridge collapse in West Virginia. Same day, different year. Odd, eerie stuff.
That is completely freaky.
Yeah.
How far away from Point Pleasant was that?
I'll show you my lack of geographic understanding. Speaking in general terms, I'd say it's within 100 miles.
Either way, close enough.
It's my safe guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. And yet nobody ever talks about that.
Nobody does. And interestingly, Andy Colvin has an odd coincidence, and Alan Greenfield, I believe, speaks about this also in his work, that they felt that the great beast, Aleister Crowley, channeled some type of energy around that time that perhaps brought that Elk River down and opened the door for all this different ultra-terrestrial energy to be taking place. That's a whole different avenue of pursuit, but it's
we could get into that kind of woo. We could definitely get into that kind of woo. I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Bill Kousoulas is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking Mothman, continuing right after this on Spaced Out Radio.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Need that weekend supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best in paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblelicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. So for more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
We're taking Sunday nights out of this world on Spaced Out Radio. This is Michael W. Hall, also known as the Paranormal Lawyer. Together, we're going to go on an exciting journey into the unknown. I'm going to bring you some of the best interviews in the paranormal and supernatural to start your new week off on a freaky note. So tune in to Spaced Out Sundays with me, Michael W. Hall, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate all of you taking the time to hang on out. Yes, especially all of you in Ontario, because we love our new affiliate there. We really do. Saga 960 AM. And in Washington State, our other new affiliate, KZAX 94.9 in Bellingham, Washington. Good to have you guys along for the ride. Also, want to remind you that all of our archives are free for you. If you're new, you might want to catch up. There's only like 900 of them. At youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and staying up to date on the news with Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. We are talking about Mothman tonight. This gentleman's been doing the research, investigating for 20-plus years. We have Bill Kousoulas with us, and we really appreciate that. Bill, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
Not a problem, my friend. Thank you for coming in. All right.
Absolutely.
Got a couple questions from Gail, because she's going to kick my butt if I do not ask them. She is asking, is it possible Mothman was attempting to warn the residents of Point Pleasant of the imminent collapse of the bridge?
Oh, I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, John Keel likes to say that belief is the enemy of truth. So I try to steer away from belief, because I don't think any of us really knows. But I think in my heart of hearts and through things that I've investigated about the Mothman phenomenon, I do think it was a harbinger. I think it was trying to warn. I think it was communicating with people within the community. And again, not just there, but in other places as well, too, with some of the prophecies that were received by John Keel, by residents of Point Pleasant, by people in Mount Misery in Long Island, which we haven't gone into a whole lot. To answer your question, Gail, yeah, that's what I think. My best educated guess is I think it was a warning.
Okay, I want to expand on that a little bit. Why do you believe that this was something that was trying to forewarn the community? What would be the purpose of that?
You know, you've been in this field deeper and longer than I have in terms of the ufological, and I'm sure you're familiar with the term space brothers.
Yes.
The folks from outer space who are benevolent, and they're looking after our development, and they're trying to help foster good things for the human race. And I don't know that these are the exact type of energies. I mean, this stuff is all conjecture. Really it is. But because the visions happened, because Mary Hyre had the dream of the presence floating on the river prior to the bridge going down, because the Mothman never actually physically harmed anybody, and because all the different prophecies were delivered to different community members in both New York and West Virginia, and directly to John Keel, those prophecies that were received, like we talked about last hour with the Martin Luther King assassination, as well as the Pope and the attack that was thankfully thwarted on his life, to me it stands to reason that that line of prophetic warning was going along the lines of more benevolent purposes than malignant ones. I mean, that's what I've kind of come to, not necessarily concluded, because I think, again, this is all conjecture. All of this stuff is, because we don't really know, but it just, to me, stands to reason that they were warnings not to harm people, but to protect them or warn them from potential disaster.
All right. I don't know if I put personal stock into that, but I mean, hey, stranger and weirder things have happened. You know, they really have.
The good news is you don't have to buy it. I think we can all subscribe to whatever thoughts we have about this whole thing, because I don't know that we're ever really going to know. That's where my thoughts have led me.
Before we get to Gail's next question, and there's a couple more, I just want to ask you, in regards to the Mothman and everything and you've mentioned the prophecies of John Keel, for people who may not be familiar with that, what do you mean by the prophecies?
Sure. So, and just to back up a little bit on John Keel, and not to be redundant, but John Keel was a screenwriter in the 60s. He wrote skits and jokes for Merv Griffin and other folks that were on television, and decided this wasn't a fulfilling way of life for him. He was getting paid well, but he hated what he was doing, got into ufology, started studying that, and then got into the Mothman aspect of things, kind of as a side venture, almost like a weekend excursion type thing, but it turned out to be a decade-long investigation for him when it was all said and done. But, it just, the prophecies that he received and the information that was given to him, either channeled through a lady by the name of J.P. Perrow, who was another investigator in New York. She delivered messages to him from, we used the word ultra-terrestrials before, from different individuals. One of them that went by the name of Apol, A-P-O-L. They just gave him all kinds of different information. Some of it never really arrived at a logical conclusion. Some of it seemed to be wild goose chases, but then we have these other ones that we're talking about in terms of the Martin Luther King assassination attempt and the Pope assassination attempt, and other things were happening as well too. Those were some of the prophecies that were received by John Keel.
Gotcha. All right. So as we move on here, I want to ask Gail's second question. She is asking, did Indrid Cold ever speak of Mothman or what his purpose was?
I do not believe so. No, I don't think that there was any cross-pollination between those two alleged entities, or I don't believe, no, Cold never spoke about Mothman itself. Now, in the Mothman Prophecies movie, they combine the Mothman phenomenon with the Indrid Cold phenomenon and kind of tie it all up into one entity, but that's not the way the books have depicted those two energies. They're entirely different, and it was never alluded to in the text that they were, like I mentioned, I used the word cross-pollinated or connected, or that they talked about each other.
All right. Sparkles has a question. She was asking, when people saw this or have been seeing it recently, are there any sounds that have been observed with the sightings?
So the recent sightings that have happened, that I have actually been aware of, the things that I've heard, and I have some friends that are really investigating this very closely, much more closely than I am. I've heard screeching. That's the one predominant thing that I've heard. Besides that, nothing else comes to mind. But screeching, yes, I have heard that in certain sightings, certain instances in the Chicagoland area and Great Lakes area.
All right. Let's move on here. In regards to being a harbinger of the unknown, were people getting any type of psychic connections with this creature, or were they given any sort of prophecy themselves that there was going to be a major incident which evolved into the collapse of the Silver Bridge?
Well, Keel specifically was getting reports of an impending disaster. In fact, jogging my memory just a little bit now, but there was an incident. It was happening. Lyndon B. Johnson was the president of the United States in 1967. And Keel was receiving prophetic information from this ultra-terrestrial entity that went by the name Apol, or Apple. And allegedly there was going to be a big blackout that was going to happen throughout the northeast section of the United States, and it was going to be massive. And that kind of gives us a little bit of a segue into another book, another Keel compilation by Andy Colvin that's called The Big Blackout. And it speaks directly to not so much the Point Pleasant aspects of the Mothman saga, but more the Long Island, Mount Misery aspects with J.P. Perrow and Apol and Agar, who was another ultra-terrestrial that manifested to J.P. Perrow also. But the prophecy as far as that Keel was receiving, that he was so concerned about, was that when Lyndon B. Johnson threw the switch for the Christmas light, the Christmas tree on the White House lawn to be lit up, that was going to coincide with this massive blackout, which was going to be this extraterrestrial / ultra-terrestrial, what have you. It was going to be their illustration of their presence. And they had allegedly intimated this to Keel, that this was going to happen right at that point in time. That didn't happen, but it was shortly after that, within minutes, that the Silver Bridge collapsed, and Keel got word of that from his apartment in New York.
Wow. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Like a case of misdirection, like something's going to happen, it's really bad, it's going to be here, and then it happens 500 miles over there. Really spooky stuff.
I should ask, and I probably should have asked earlier regarding this, considering there's a lot of military bases in and around that area, was there any military response to any of these UFO sightings, the Mothman sightings at all?
Only in the TNT area. That's the only place that I'm aware of when they quarantined that particular area off for whatever their purpose was, whether it was to hide munitions or because they were aware that there was some type of alien presence or Mothman something, whatever it was that was going on there, they blocked it off. Besides that, we've got the Men in Black episodes. Are they government? Are they not government? We don't really know. We kind of lean towards, we think that they're probably otherworldly, but, besides that, not really. Let me step back from that for a second. The only other aspect that I'm aware of in terms of military was some alleged military officers that went by odd pseudonyms that when Keel investigated them, they didn't pan out. There was a Major Richard French, who's written about in the Mothman Prophecies, who turned out to not have any credibility as to who he was. So there were some weird things going on that way, but not military, not force, not guns. More of a matter of, I'm with the Air Force and I'm here to talk to you about this kind of a thing,
Absolutely. So the military really showed no concern in regards to it.
Not really outside of that aspect of the TNT / McClintock Wildlife area when they quarantined that area.
What did we learn from that entire aspect? Because Mothman, for the most part, disappeared for a long time afterwards, before only a few years ago starting to appear in the Chicagoland area recently. So what did we learn from that first part? What were we supposed to learn, do you think?
That's a really interesting question. What were we supposed to learn? I think the first thing that comes to mind for me, Dave, is that there are things that are out there in our existence that we don't understand. They're beyond our 5-sense physical comprehension and perception. To close ourselves off from those things, whether they're spiritual in nature, whether they're ultra-terrestrial, extraterrestrial, I think the message there, or at least the piece that I get, is there's wonder, there's mystery in this world, there's things that we need to be paying attention to, perception, all kinds of mystical things exist all in and around us. that if we're not paying attention to them, we're kind of missing the adventure of life. I mean, I think that's what really draws me to this mystery, is that it just keeps me guessing, thinking, wondering, looking, seeking, searching. I think that's the message that I get from it.
I don't know what message that I get or that many others get, because everybody seems to have a different opinion of what is happening here and what has happened. Out of the 20 years that you have been doing this, maybe give us some of the aspects of the untrue that are out there, that we can throw them in the garbage and push them to the side, that we shouldn't fall for that type of woo. Can you give me a little more to work with there? I guess I'm not quite sure where we're going. Well, just in regards, you have your facts, and after 20 years, I think you've done a very good social aspect of the creature, what it's all about, what it's done, what it wasn't involved with. Yet there are a lot of people out there who will say that this creature was attacking people, this creature was responsible for the bridge collapse, the photographs are real. You know what I'm saying? Is there, with every good solid piece of information, there's probably 10 or 12 forgeries and fakeries out there.
Sure. Well, then I guess my whole go to market with this whole thing, in terms of understanding it, what I believe that I've learned, what my angle in understanding what's happened, what's happening, what have you, and all that, is that, I think it's to some degree, it's beyond our entire comprehension. I don't think we're going to be able to get all of it. I do think that, you've always got things that are legitimate perceptions. Then you're going to have things that might be made up or misinterpreted. That part of it, I try not to get judgmental with a whole lot of that. I'm more of a Mothman historian who's really involved with understanding what happened back in the 60s. I do have a small group of friends that we have been doing some research investigating in the greater Chicagoland area. More of my friends are doing the investigating area of it than I am. But we're kind of taking a look at some of the different things that are happening there. Don't really know what it is yet. Still collecting data at this point in time, not drawing any conclusions, not ruling things out absolutely, but really trying to put together more of an empirical study to make sure that before we make any assertions as to what we think this possibly could be, that we have good data to work with. And I would say at this point in time, I haven't seen a lot of that.
What would you do if you came face to face with this creature?
Probably faint. I would probably faint. I guess I like to think that I would try to remain as calm as possible and observe, and try to incorporate maybe more perception than so much sensing, and try to get what it's all about, try to understand what it is. I like to think I wouldn't be scared to the point that I'd turn around and run. But ultimately, I think I'd try to understand it and try to communicate. If it were some type of an energy that was capable of communicating with me, I think it'd be fascinating. Okay,
you got to take us through that, man. You got to take us through that, because, for a lot of people, we would get up and run. But, you have to... you got to bring out that intestinal fortitude, man, and bring it on out to get that strength to go up to it and say, hey, Double M, what's happening? Can we go for a beer here? Can we go for a beer here? Because we really need to sit down and talk. Yeah, again, I would like to think that I would have the confidence and the fortitude to be able to hold my own and just try to take it in. I'm a prayerful person, Dave. I'm a very spiritual person. I never believe I'm alone entirely. And I think if I were to be encountered by something of that nature, I want to believe I was feeling that I was bolstered from within and from without, and capable of being able to do some type of communicating or understanding what the phenomenon was, and have some type of interaction with it. But I'm also a human being. I'm not fearless. So I don't know. That's a great question. I guess I've never really considered that before. I'd like to believe that I would be able to hold my own and try to have some type of communication. Do you think it would talk back? And I kind of giggle with that, but I mean, there's a reality to that. Do you think the creature would talk back?
Quite possibly not. And quite possibly, in some type of riddle, the way that Keel received his information, never knowing what was going to happen here, believing it was going to happen here, and then it happened there instead. I don't know. But I guess I'd kind of like to defer back to another scene in the movie. Have you seen the movie?
Long ago.
There is a scene where Alexander Leak, who is the guy from Chicago, who was a professor who began experiencing this phenomenon decades before, lost his career, lost his pension, all these types of things. But Richard Gere, the main character, is seeking him out to find out what his thoughts are, how he could help him understand what this thing was. And at one point, they're having an exchange and a conversation, allegedly in Chicago, but it was filmed in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, I believe. And the exchange in the conversation is, Gere wants to know, why doesn't this thing just come right out and tell us what's on its mind? And this guy looks at him, Leak looks at him and says, "You're more advanced than a cockroach. You ever try explaining yourself to them?"
Well, that works.
Maybe it's not going to even, maybe I'm just a cockroach compared to this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I totally get that. Bill, we've got about 2-3 minutes here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. And we're talking Mothman with Bill Kousoulas tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I got to ask you, in regards to your personal opinion of how you would react, what if it was one of your child or your wife or your any relative who saw this? Would your reaction be any different?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got to go into Papa Bear mode then. I think you've got to protect against the unknown at that point. Throw your arms around them and get them out of harm's way, even if maybe it's not harm, that unknown factor. If it's me, I'm a little more apt to be able to take that step. If it's my wife or my daughter or whoever, that's a different story. I think at that point you've got to go into defensive mode. I think you have to.
I don't know, man.
I'll let you know when it happens.
I would love for you to do that, man. I would love for you to tell us what's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that we always ask ourselves about what would we do if we had this encounter? How would we react? And with the sightings that are happening now in the Chicago and Indiana area, you have to wonder, is this a premonition to what is happening again? And we're going to talk more about that because we have you for another 30 minutes here coming up on the show. But I think we got to get into the Chicago sightings. I think we got to get into what's happening there because, and I'll ask you quickly as we got about 30 seconds here, do you think that there is a tie between the two eras?
I think there's something going on, but I'd like to see a little bit more definitive data as to what that something is. There are correlations in terms of sightings from the things that I've followed up on. There are correlations in terms of some of the sightings in the greater Chicagoland area have been depicted as being 6 to 7 foot tall with expansive wings and humanoid type appearance. What I haven't heard is the rest of the phenomena. I've heard a little bit about some UFO sightings here and there around O'Hare and various places, and some in the south suburbs.
Right. All right, you hold right there. You hold right there, Bill, because we're going to step out right now on Spaced Out Radio. More Mothman talk in Hour 3 coming up on the Mighty SOR.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend. Woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Stacey from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strange legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archive and leave a comment. See you there.
Hi there, this is paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get a Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spicing up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
We're into the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates across the continent. On the digital side, we're proud to broadcast on TalkStream Live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and on Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Falanook. Falanook is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Don't forget, if you're on Twitter, follow the show at Spaced Out Radio, along with my personal handle at Dave Scott. SOR. For the final time tonight, we introduce Bill Kousoulas. He is a Mothman investigator and researcher the last 20 years, and he's been going to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the last 4 to check things out, to stay on top of what's going on with all things Mothman. Welcome back, Bill.
Thanks, sir. Pleasure to be on the show.
Couple of quick questions for you before we get to talking about what's happening in Chicago. Greco is asking, were there any First Nations legends or stories in the area regarding Mothman?
First Nations legends or stories in the area? I guess I'm not quite sure what
American Indian.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks for reframing that. Yes. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thanks for bringing that question up, because that's one aspect we haven't even talked about yet. Probably really should have earlier in the show. My apologies for that. But yes, there is some Native American lore that's associated with the Mothman legend. And I'll tell you, most of that revolves around a gentleman by the name of Chief Cornstalk. Now, Chief Cornstalk was the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation back in 1700s. And he was by nature a warrior, but a peacemaker. If he could make peace and govern, through his diplomacy, he would prefer to do that than to have trouble. And he worked very hard to do that. Unfortunately, the colonists were pushing westward, and they didn't want boundaries, and they loved the land, and they wanted the land. And Chief Cornstalk actually lived from 1727 to 77. I think he was 50 years old when he passed away, but he actually traveled to Fort Randolph, which was the settlement that was held by the colonists at the time, and wanted to, negotiate peace. Now, there had been an outbreak, and there had been a couple of Indians who had attacked white men, and there was a death or two that took place. And this really made the men furious. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of carousing, a lot of partying going on. And Chief Cornstalk and his son, as they approached Fort Randolph, were taken captive, and they were basically put in stocks. And eventually they were murdered. I mean, they were murdered and were defenseless. So the great warrior and diplomat, Chief Cornstalk, was murdered at the hands of the settlers. Now, there is a legend, and this is not subscribed to by all, by any means, but there is a legend that Cornstalk had uttered a curse upon the land to last for 200 years for what the white men had done to him, to his son, and ultimately to his people. Now, I will tell you that our very first visit in 2016 that my wife and I made to Point Pleasant, when we met Carolyn Harris, the proprietor of the Harris's Steakhouse, we just fell in love with that lady. She was just awesome, one of the nicest down-home people, and she was actually one of the, not necessarily UFO witnesses or Mothman witnesses, but she saw the beautiful lights in the sky, and she saw the men in black. That's the lady that I was talking about. Now, our second or third night in town, we went back to a restaurant to grab a Mothman burger because she made Mothman burgers. And there was a lady who was working in the restaurant, and her name is Lynn. And Lynn actually is a descendant of Chief Cornstalk. And so we asked her what her thoughts were with respect to Chief Cornstalk. Now, Lynn actually is featured in The Mothman of Point Pleasant, which came out the following year. So for anybody who's watched that particular show, she's actually on that. And what she told us was, no way. There is no way my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather would have ever cursed the land, because the Indian people, the Native Americans, didn't believe they owned the land. They believed they were stewards of the land. They would never curse the land. So that's somebody who comes as a direct descendant of Chief Cornstalk. There is a legend. Is there validity to it? I don't know, but I can tell you that a direct descendant of Chief Cornstalk says no. That is not, absolutely not the case. He would never curse the land.
All right, let's move on to Overbuilt's question. Is the Mothman in Chicago because of an open portal caused by evil people and or occult activity?
That's an interesting question. That is an interesting question. The first thing that comes to mind to me when I hear that is related to another episode Small Town Monsters did, and that was about the Bray Road Beast. And for anybody who's seen the Bray Road Beast, there is a theory that that entity was brought about by just that same thing, some type of occult practice, some type of ritualistic magic, sacrifice, what have you, that had to do with that. As I hear myself talk through that with respect to that area, I think the way that I perceive the Mothman and the Mothman energy, quote unquote Mothman energy, to be, I don't think so. I just don't think so. I don't personally make that connection. Again, I don't associate the Mothman with evil so much as, if anything, neutral, but really more on the lines of, hey, there's something going on here you need to take stock of, more of a harbinger, more of a warning type presence. So I guess my thought, and I could be wrong, my thought is no, I don't think so.
All right, so what is happening in Chicago with these sightings over the last couple of years? Because they've really popped out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. And because there was no real segue from Point Pleasant to 50 years forward to Chicago. There really wasn't. And were there some other sightings? Were there some other reports? A smattering. Yeah, here and there. Different thing happened here. Different thing happened there. But all of a sudden, you're getting this pretty huge concentration of sightings that had allegedly taken place in the Chicagoland area. And I have a number of the reports that have come into the MUFON database, and I've taken a look at them. And there are some similarities. There are some things that look like the reports are talking about something that's the same. But then there are some other ones that the description of the entity are totally different. And there is a little bit of ufological activity that's spoken of in a couple of the reports too. As I started to mention before we went to break, what I've seen, I think in the cases that I've taken a look at with the colleagues that I've been associated with, I do think something's going on. It's not as fully formed as obviously 50 years worth of legend that took place or allegedly took place in the Point Pleasant area. I'm not comfortable taking a leap to state that this is the same thing. I'd like to do some more research, analyze it a little bit more, look at it more closely, and then start coming up with some ideas. Because I don't know. I don't know that they're related, but I can't say that they're not.
All right. So is the creature that people are seeing in Chicago and in Indiana likely have the same description as what was seen in Point Pleasant 50 years previous?
That is part of the description. And I would say in the reports that I've seen, I'd say probably 40 to 50% of the sightings have been similar to what was described in Point Pleasant 50 years ago.
So it's quite similar. What are the differences that you were hearing?
Well, some of the differences that I've heard have been manifestation of a single wing rather than two wings. Now, this was by an individual that one of my colleagues has interviewed a couple of times and had pretty extensive dialogue with. And actually, I just worked editing a report of his just yesterday morning for that matter, and taking a look at it. And it was a description of something that I believe even the person who experienced it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, I haven't met this gentleman, but it sounded like he was describing something that was more mechanical in nature than a being. So there have been some reports that do sound like a description of what happened in Point Pleasant. From what I've seen, there have been some that look like they're more mechanical in nature. And then there have been some other ones that have been more like big birds or almost pterodactyl type things.
All right. In regards to what is happening, I know there has been sightings around O'Hare International Airport. And usually when anything strange or weird happens around a major hub like O'Hare, that draws in the military, that draws in the TSA, the police, the FBI, everybody. Have they been looking into that?
I have not heard that. In fact, being 60 miles outside of Chicago, I'm not really privy to what happens on a daily basis in Chicago proper. But the people that I have talked to, not witnesses per se, outside of the paranormal community, there is almost no vibe about Mothman in Chicagoland. From the people that I've talked to, this is being circulated in the paranormal communities. It's not a mainstream thing. That's the minor conclusion that I've come to.
Really? That's kind of interesting. Kind of interesting that it went there.
Oh.
You know, it really is. Your phone cut out there for a little second there. But, Bill, in regards to then what people are seeing, what experiences are happening there then from these eyewitnesses?
For the most part, what I've picked up on is people have seen this alleged creature or this alleged being, manifestation, mechanical device, what have you, whatever it is. They've seen it. They've been afraid. They've left. They've reported it. And that's about it. I mean, I have not heard anything in terms of any of the rest of the things that may well be ascribed to lore from Point Pleasant, but the things in terms of prophetic visions, certainly a serious concentration of ufological activity, none of that, certainly hasn't been a major disaster unless we want to call this coronavirus thing, which is the only thing that I can see that's maybe could be tied to whatever could possibly be happening in the Chicagoland area. I haven't seen a major disaster happen. Not that that has to happen. I just think it merits more investigation.
So do you think then that maybe this could be from people who are trying to resurrect this own image of this creature? Could it be complete hoaxing?
So I've done some considerable discussion with some of the folks that I've been working with. And we believe that there's a social, psychological aspect to this. We do believe that it's really easy to kind of see something we want to believe is there. I think that there's a phenomenon that's taking place. And don't get me wrong, Dave, I don't know enough to say something's not happening there. But I think that there is a social, psychological aspect to what's happening there, or to some degree. And I think this is kind of being perpetuated. And I think it's kind of gone viral on the internet. And I'd like to know a little bit more about it. But I know Lon
Strickler has been all over it and been getting a lot of reports. Would you say that some of those reports are maybe a little fake?
I don't want to point fingers. I haven't really read Lon's work. The reports that I've seen that have come into the MUFON database and the other things that I've gotten my hands on, they seem kind of redundant, but that doesn't mean that something is not happening there.
Interesting. So these sightings that are happening in Illinois, in Indiana, I believe there's been a couple dozen now in the last 2.5, 3 years from that area. What do you think sparked them?
It's actually more than that. From what I've heard, it's more in the 75 to 100. And I don't know if you know the investigator, Allison Jornlin. I don't know if you're familiar with Allison.
Heard of her.
She and I have talked at length about a couple of different things here. And I've kind of taken a look and putting two and two together. But there have been some interesting things that have dovetailed with the phenomenon taking place in Chicagoland area as it sits. And one of the things is the 50-year anniversary of the Silver Bridge collapse. That's the first thing that I have kind of taken a look at and thought, it's really interesting that this didn't really manifest until 50 years after the bridge went down and the whole Mothman phenomenon took place back in the 60s. It wasn't 47 years. It wasn't 49 years. Has it kind of gone beyond the 50-year thing? Yeah, but that's when it really started taking off. And, it just, like I said, I'm a little skeptical.
And what leads to that skepticism?
No real concentration of things to this magnitude since Point Pleasant. Now, another thing is, let's say that there have been 100 sightings in the Chicago metropolitan area. 100 sightings in the Chicago metropolitan area, which consists of approximately 8-9 million people in the greater Chicagoland area, is a much lower percentage than what took place with 100 sightings in Point Pleasant 50 years prior. You've got an area there, the micropolitan statistical area of Point Pleasant, 9,000 people, maybe 9,000 people, much higher concentration, same number, much bigger area. Plus, you've got O'Hare there. I mean, you've got all types of flying. You've got planes all over the place. We have drones today. There are all kinds of different things that could be presenting that could perhaps give people the impression they're seeing something that maybe they're not. And again, I'm not saying that they're not. I'm on the skeptical side on this one. That's just where I sit with it.
Does it deserve more investigation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen some really good work. There are a couple books out. You mentioned Ron Strickler. I haven't really read his. Tobias Wayland has a book out, which is very well written book. There's some people that are on it, and we've been looking at it too. We just want to make sure that, if we're going to get behind something and say that this is what we believe it is, we want to have more proof. And I guess I don't want to use the word purist, but maybe the traditionalist, the historical aspect of the Mothman from the 60s. I've seen all the other tangential information that we talked about with the prophecies, with the Indrid Cold aspect, with the Men in Black, with the military shutting down the McClintock wildlife area, and obviously 50 years of lore that have transpired between then and now, that there's been a lot of time for a legend to grow up, where perhaps here there hasn't been that kind of time yet. Keel didn't write his book until 1975. It was 8 years after the episode ended. So there was a lot of work that went into that book and a lot of back research and piecing together of his notes and different interviews that he had done to really take in a broad overview of the spectrum of what took place in Point Pleasant. We haven't had that kind of time to work with here in Chicagoland.
We've only got about 2 minutes left with you tonight on Spaced Out Radio, Bill. And this is time that has flown on by, no pun intended to the Mothman. But,
yeah.
I'm just curious in regards to your own research regarding this. Where do you go now with all of these different sightings in the Illinois state?
So I'll give you a little background that we haven't talked about yet. I have a full-time regular profession, 50-hour a week plus type commitment. For the last 5 years, I've been finishing a PhD in psychology. So it's been difficult for me to really piece a lot of time together to be able to throw a lot of energy into investigating this. But the plan that I have, because the dissertation will be completed here within the next couple of months, once that's done with, then we want to investigate. And when I say we, my wife and I have come up with the idea. My paper is written about post-traumatic growth. What I would like to do is interview people who have seen this thing, been involved with this thing, how it's affected them, and to see where their lives have gone since then. So that's the angle, I think, that I'm looking for, to be able to take a look at both the phenomenon in Point Pleasant as well as what might be happening here in Chicagoland, as well as anywhere else. And it's not just limited to Mothman. It's also taking a look at really any paranormal experiencer. But those are the things that really fascinate me. I want to find out what the human element is and how these types of events have manifested and changed these people's lives. That's what I would look at.
Where can people find your research?
I can be found on Facebook right now. Frankly, I've got to finish this dissertation and then move forward from there. We've got a book in the works already. It's about post-traumatic growth and divorce, and then the second project. It's a work in process right now. We're getting my wife retired so she can assist me in going forward to do this. But right now, the best way to contact me is over Facebook. Let's begin a dialogue, and we'll be looking for folks who are interested in sharing their stories to see how they've grown to put together some work.
Bill Kousoulas, I appreciate you coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight, talking all night long about the Mothman. Very, very intriguing and interesting research you're doing. Keep up the great work.
Dave, thanks so much for giving me the audience. I really appreciate your time.
Not a problem. You hold on, sit tight, because we got to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Bill Kousoulas, everybody, talking Mothman. Next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave coming on up as we look to take this thing home. Stay tuned. More Spaced Out Radio right around the corner.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thaw, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Hey, Spaced Out Radio fans! It's John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from advanced therapy programs to prosthetic limbs to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Need that weekend supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best in paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Great to have all of you with us. Want to remind all of you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot. And don't forget to read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. As well, if you're on Twitter, follow the show at Spaced Out Radio, along with my personal handle at Dave Scott SOR. Speaking of the news, it's that time once again. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the WTF. Yes. Despite repeatedly urging Canadians to stay home for Easter weekend amid the coronavirus pandemic, even if it meant not seeing their families, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is taking some heat and defending the decision to go see his. The pandemic forced Canadians across the country to abandon hopes of travel to see loved ones, and also came amid warnings from public officials for people not to travel to cottages unless that there is already their primary residence. And really, just don't leave your homes at all. But shortly after calling on Canadians to stay home for the long weekend and Skype that big family dinner, Trudeau crossed the provincial border from Ottawa into Quebec to visit his wife and 3 children at Harrington Lake. Harrington Lake is the name of a federally designated heritage building maintained by the National Capital Commission that serves as the country residence of Canadian prime ministers. While only an hour-and-a-half drive from Ottawa, getting to the residence requires crossing the provincial border into Quebec, something police recently set up checkpoints in a bid to limit. Trudeau defended the travel when questioned by journalists about this incident. He goes, after 3 weeks of my family living up at Harrington and me working here, I went to join them for Easter weekend. We continue to follow all the instructions from the public health authorities, he said. Yes, but did somebody tell you this was okay? Asked one journalist. All over social media, people are wondering why this exception was okay for you. Why was it okay for you to go see your family at the cottage? My family, the Prime Minister repeated, has been living there for 3 weeks. This is where my wife and children live. Speaking on background, government officials said The Prime Minister should be considered an essential worker and therefore allowed to cross the border into Quebec. The official also suggested the travel should be viewed as the Prime Minister traveling between his work location and a new primary residence for his family. But the Trudeaus live in a 22-room Rideau cottage in Ottawa's New Edinburgh neighborhood. That is where Sophie Gregoire Trudeau completed her quarantine after being diagnosed with COVID-19. That diagnosis came on March 12th, and her quarantine ended March 28th. It's also the neighborhood where his children have for years attended school, not Quebec. It is not clear why the Trudeaus and the children have decided to live at the cabin or why they chose not to go back to Ottawa for Easter. Unlike from Ottawa into Gatineau, non-essential travel from Gatineau into Ottawa is not restricted. Oh, yes, this is all just make you shake your head. What's good for one is not good for the rest. You know what I'm saying? We're all equal in this thing. However, some are more equal than others. End Times pastor Jim Bakker and his ministry have been blocked from using credit card transactions after promoting a fake miracle cure for coronavirus. This came after the publication Right Wing Watch reported the show in February for soliciting its silver solution as a way to cure people infected with COVID. Baker was warned by the New York Attorney General's office to stop making misleading claims about the product and was also ordered by the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Trade Commission to immediately cease making all such claims about the effectiveness of the silver solution. On top of that, Baker was also sued by the Office of the Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt for misrepresentations about the effectiveness of silver solution as a treatment for the novel virus. All of Baker's legal problems have prompted credit card companies to cancel all his transactions, leaving the pastor to beg his watchers for checks instead. Even though the footage is readily available, Baker asserts that people saying he's peddling the silver solution as a cure were lying. He even goes as far to say that people rewrote parts of the show. We're doing so well, Baker lamented. For the last few weeks, the processing companies have been taking the money and putting it into their own accounts. We have not received money, they think, because somebody told a lie about us. So now they're saying, well, the people might want their money back, so we've got to keep all your money. Please stand with us. If people come against us, then it's not going to be impossible, or it's going to be impossible for us to stay on the air. Oh, my goodness. Wouldn't that just be a detractor? Baker has also been called out for his disinformation and is now trying to backpedal. He is being held accountable for trying to capitalize on the worldwide pandemic. He is reaping what he has sown, as the Bible states. Good for him. Way to go, Jim. I guess those 8 years in prison really didn't teach you anything, except how to hustle a little bit stronger. A man from Indiana ended up receiving what appeared to be a lottery win rather than his stimulus check. Charles Calvin checked his bank account and found that $8.2 million had been deposited into his checking account instead of the $1,700 he had been expecting to cover himself and a child. The IRS announced it had sent out its first round of stimulus payments this past weekend. Calvin, a volunteer firefighter in New Chicago, Indiana, couldn't believe what he was seeing when he checked his balance at the ATM. I went to the ATM at the Family Express. I withdrew $200 out of my account. I looked at the available balance still left. At first, he thought the machine had thrown up some sort of error, so he ran his card again, but the exact same amount was shown. On Monday, he called his bank and was told the money was no longer in his account, although the $1,700 stimulus money was. Well, good for him. It kind of sucks, he says. You go from being a millionaire 1 second, then back to being broke again. But hey, once you're poor, you don't have anywhere else to go but up. Calvin is not sure if the readout was an error made by the federal government or the ATM he used. Either way, he's not complaining as he received what he was legitimately entitled to. Most people should receive their deposits in the coming days, beginning with taxpayers who filed their returns for 2018 and 2019 or 2019 signed up for direct deposit with the IRS in the United States. All right, the haunting sight of a large fishing vessel grounded at Cape Hatteras National Seashore apparently has become too much for explorers to resist and is starting to worry the National Park Service. A warning has now been issued for people to stay off the rusting hull, known as ocean pursuit. We have multiple reports that groups of people are boarding the vessel, Cape Hatteras spokesperson Mark Barber says. Visitors must not board the shipwreck due to safety concerns. He didn't detail the threats aboard the Ocean Pursuit, but the 72-foot vessel is unstable in the sand and sits 50 yards from the dry land at high tide. Stay too long and you could be swimming ashore or even floating out to sea, he is telling people. Boats that run aground on the Outer Banks are often broken apart by pounding winds and waves if left too long, experts say. They could also be dragged back out to sea if the storm is right. The Ocean Pursuit ran aground March 1st, and its crew was rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard. It now stands as a visible reminder of the region's reputation as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Hundreds of vessels have met their demise in the rough currents and shifting sands off North Carolina. The Ocean Pursuit had been grounded long enough to become an attraction to locals and tourists alike and is a favorite subject for photographers. Outer Banks photographer Wes Snyder used the wreck as a backdrop for a recent time-lapse video of the Milky Way, earning nearly 30,000 views on YouTube. It's unclear how long the wreck will remain, but all hazardous material and fuels on board have been removed. The owner of the Ocean Pursuit has been in contact with the branch, and they are currently unable to provide a time frame for removing the vessel. Here's one wild ride. How'd you like to be this 64-year-old dude? A surprise company outing to an airbase caused a French man so much stress that he flung himself from a fighter jet in mid-air, grabbing the ejector button in a panic and tumbling through the skies above France before landing in a field. Yeah. So this gentleman had been surprised by employees at his firm who organized a joyride in a Dassault Rafale B fighter jet as a treat. But they apparently didn't know their colleague as well as they thought, because once the man arrived at the Saint-Nazaire Air Base in northeastern France in March and realized what his coworkers had arranged, he began to feel extremely stressed, according to a fairly remarkable aviation accident report by a French government agency. The unnamed man had never expressed any desire to fly in a fighter jet and had no previous military aviation experience, investigators discovered. And thanks to a watch he was wearing, which could measure his heart rate, investigators noticed that his heart was in full why do they call that? Why can I say it? Tachycardia before the flight, with a recorded heart rate ranging between 136 and 142 beats per minute. This guy was about to explode. Holy cow. But the man went through with the ride anyways, joining a 3-plane training exercise as a passenger. The Rafale B is used by the French Air Force and has a maximum speed of 1,400 kilometers per hour, so around Mach 2. When the jet was around 2,500 feet above the ground and the pilot began to climb, the passenger panicked and reached onto something to hold on to. Unfortunately, it was the ejector seat button. And poof, out he shot from the canopy, and gone he was into the wild blue yonder. To make matters worse, he had not securely attached his helmet, which went flying in midair. Fortunately, the man avoided serious injury after parachuting to earth in a field near the German border. Investigators concluded that the error was caused by an involuntary reflex prompted by stress and the jet's sudden movement. The pilot was not ejected and managed to land the plane safely despite suffering some minor facial injuries during the ordeal. Yeah. If you're in a jet plane, keep your hand away from the ejector seat. All right? It just makes the ride a little less bumpy and dangerous. An Ontario recycling company is reminding residents to use some discretion when getting rid of unwanted items after someone attempted to recycle a sword. The Blue Water Recycling Association in South Huron says in a Facebook post titled Most Unwanted April Edition that someone put a metal sword into a blue box recycling bin. The post said the sword was found before going through our machinery, or it could have caused extensive, expensive damage to our machines and serious health and safety issues for our employees. The association said the sword's former owner might have been better off turning the weapon over to a secondhand store. Just because something is made of metal and may be perfectly recyclable at the local scrapyard doesn't mean it is acceptable in the blue box for recycling, the post said. Placing pots and pans, bakeware, chains, electrical cord extensions, nuts and bolts, etc. in the blue boxes simply adds to the contamination and downtime in the processing facility. This also has the potential to add risk of injury to the employees. Why not just put it on Craigslist or take it to the local pawn shop? Might have been a little easier. Huron. I'm West Coast Canadian. All right? Forgive me. Huron. Not Huron. Huron. A large wildcat with big claws has been spotted in a man's garden, raising suspicions that the legendary fen tiger is on the loose. The man who photographed the animal this past weekend says it was about the size of a fully grown Labrador and too large to be more common like a wildcat native in the UK. And he said it wasn't the first time he'd seen the creature in the area, as on other occasions he just wasn't able to get pictures. The fen tiger has a legendary reputation in South Lincolnshire and neighboring county of Cambridgeshire, thanks to more than 30 years of sightings, and the last spot was in central Cambridge. First photographed in 1994, it was reportedly spotted in December last year near St. Neots in Cambridgeshire by a woman out walking her dog. It has also been reportedly seen by people in Holbeck Beach and Wisebeck. Gotta love these UK names. In the latest sighting, the Cambridge University worker photographed a mysterious animal from his kitchen window. It was around 8:30 in the morning when I saw the animal from my kitchen window. I think it somehow keeps coming back to this place to hunt rabbits and other small animals. He goes, initially I thought it was a wildcat, like a Felis silveretus, or the European wildcat. But then I went to my colleagues at the university, and they said it can't have been because this animal is way bigger. Look at the tail. It's definitely a different species. It's a wildcat, but not that species, I don't think. The animal was a brown and black color with very long tail that had a lot of black circles on it. The tail was so long, and its legs were thick as well as big claws. It was about the size of a Labrador retriever. When asked if the animal he saw could have been the fen tiger, he said maybe. I have heard about the mystery fen tiger, but I didn't know if this was it. This was a wildcat that people have said the fen tiger is, and this one is as large as a dog. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Let's get to it before the wildcats come around. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Huron. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What's your thoughts on Mothman from the 60s to the sightings people are allegedly having today? Start off with Goddess Michelle. I am concerned about what pesticides they are using in this area and the effects on the moths. Shanna Banana. Hi, Shanna. I love hearing about Mothman encounters. I think there is something to the stories and can't wait to hear more. Anthony. Mothman, flying humanoids in general? Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. William. Something has to be it. Mothman. To the new Chicago sightings, even back to the Blackbird of Chernobyl. Very interesting. All right, let's continue on. Christopher, I believe the Mothman has been among since the time immortal. As the paranormal gains more acceptance, wouldn't surprise me that folks will take a second look over old records. Andrew, I've been in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Never experienced anything creepy there, but the land has a vibe to it. I've slept in the rest area 3 or 4 times, and the newer truck stop twice. It doesn't surprise me more that people haven't noticed Mothman, and some that have had terrifying stories of him, like the last couple that was chased in their cars in the 1950s. Joe, hang a giant bug zapper from the bottom of the new bridge. Oh, that is hilarious. Hilarious! Michael, did he show up before the outbreak? Of course he did. Tim, being fairly close to the area, I personally think it was more of a mass hysteria thing. A large avian may have attacked a car. Like Andrew said, the area does give off a weird vibe. Michelle, the people in Point Pleasant were seeing something supernatural. They had lived in that region all their lives and could ID a known animal. What Mothman is, I have no clue. Grant, I live about an hour north of the Indrid Cold incident. Honestly, I think much of this activity here is connected to the Native Americans and the way the Europeans treated them. Just so much conflict and war up and down the Ohio Valley and along its hollows and creeks. Colleen, love the movie. I believe there are dark entities that feed on human suffering. Like that, why wouldn't they? Banshees, etc. They are in every culture. Mr. Alan Greenfield, author of The Secret Cipher of the UFO Knots. Grab that book if you got an opportunity. He'll get the final word tonight. Mothman, or Thunderbirds et al., have been around as long as people have, possibly longer. They are manifestations related to UFOs and men in black of the constant shifting interactions with the other realms, currently best explained by theoretical physics, specifically the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Look at that. The man speaketh. I think we got time for one or two more. Shauna, I would rather see him than Bigfoot or Dogman. I feel he's less aggressive. Nicole gets the final word. Definitely has my attention. Was it a warning about the bridge? Is something tragic going to befall the Chicagoland area? I think these newest sighting reports are the perfect opportunity to collect more data and investigate. Thank you for everybody participating in the Thought of the Day. We will do it all again on Facebook and Twitter tomorrow. Also, big thank you to Captain Shirk for putting together a fantastic SOR Newswire tonight. Always a lot of fun. And a big thank you to Bill Kousoulas coming in, talking all things Mothman. Oh, was he prophetic or what? Prophecy, I tell you. All about the prophecy. I have a prophecy. Here it comes. That this show is almost over. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone participating in our chat rooms on Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club on our website, Spreaker, LGAB, YouTube, and to all the snarkers and snarkats hanging out at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. You made it a very, very entertaining evening. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, because we know how important it is, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great night, everybody. Join us again tomorrow, where we'll have more fun, more woo, and just a grand old time around SOR headquarters. You're all invited. See you tomorrow. Good night.